Hi, Joyce.
And good morning.
Good morning. Spring's here.
Oh, thank God.
I know. How many times have we talked recently when it was snowing for you?
A lot.
Yeah. Um, you and I are doing a class that's starting in June. It'll go for June and July, so it's 9 Sundays.
Summer school.
Summer school. I love that. And the idea is that we will help people to write their stories because I think friends don't let friends write alone because it's really hard to write your story. I think particularly when you're adopted without any kind of guidance. Um, and you were talking about narrative therapy, which I actually don't know anything about. And I was curious if you would talk about it a little bit.
Okay, just a little bit, but I think it will be interesting to meld some narrative therapy in with the writing because I think, it helps people get into another space and really project some of this information in a different way. And I think that would be very helpful to their writing. I know that it has been for a lot of people that I've worked with. Narrative therapy is a lot of things to a lot of people, but it was really, I think, given form by Michael White years ago. And one of my favorite quotes of his is, "Narrative therapy is rescuing the telling from the told." And I love that because when you're telling a story, you tell the same story over and over again, and because it's been told and you stick to it. And if you're rescuing the telling and you keep it moving, it changes with you. And it's a way to reframe, not to tell untruths, but your truth changes over time because your cognition and your ability to see it in a different way changes. So, something that happened when you were 8 had a huge impact. And when you tell that story when you're 20, you have a slightly different view looking back on it because you've matured in certain ways, or when you tell it at 40, or when you tell it at 80. I also think that narrative therapy has been a cure for a lot of people, not just therapeutically. There's a guy named Dr. I forget his first name, Penny Baker in Texas, and he did this interesting study with graduate students who had trauma and who had like migraines or asthma. They had, medical issues that may have been connected to their trauma and may not have been. They may just have been a weakness in their system. But what he did was he had these students write for 20 minutes a day, the 4 days or 3 days they had classes every week, and to write about the trauma, just write it out. Just get it out of your head onto paper. And they did studies before and after the course. And afterwards, there was an abatement of the symptoms. They didn't go away. This didn't fix their asthma or their migraines. And there was, or maybe there was a third one. I forget what it was. But it didn't fix it, but it definitely ameliorated the impact. And they didn't have the intensity of symptoms that they had before. So I think it's really interesting to use writing, to use narrative, to make sense of certain things in your life. The other thing that happens in narrative, I'm not going to give a lecture on narrative therapy. Like to do these things very quickly, but I'm picking out some nuggets. One of the other nuggets I love when I'm working with little kids and using narrative therapy, one of the things you do is you take the problem out of them. Like if a 9-year-old boy is having trouble with anger issues, you take the anger out of him and put it on a chair, and or you put it in a action figure, And then you help him to talk about the anger as being out of him, not being him. And, so it both gives the person a chance to see themselves as separate from the issue, but able to control and change that issue in a certain way. So, giving it form and then telling a story about it and giving it some kind of reframing can change the whole situation. So these are just some of the little nuggets of things that we can look at as people are, thinking about how to tell their story and how to get to a place in themselves where they can see that story and mold it and play with it in a certain way. So it's not simply the story they've always told themselves.
Oh, that's so helpful. That's a lot of that. There's a lot of elements of that that I've been learning in the Martha Beck Wayfinder Life Coach training. And that idea that I am not my thoughts was such a was so earth-shaking to me and so freeing, because especially if you're an adoptee trying to put your story on paper, at least for me, I believed I was my thoughts and I was trying to get my beliefs on paper. But the more I paid attention to my thoughts, the more real they became. But they're thoughts, they're not who I am. And it didn't lead me to happiness. It led me to deeper worrying, feeling sad, uh, thinking that my sense of control came from my thoughts. And um, I have found that working with people with their writing, a lot of the times when they are in that, when, say, for example, their anger is inside of them and they are writing from that place, they feel like they're in the flow because they're writing thoughts that they've had many, many times. So the thoughts come very easily to them. And then they run out of those thoughts and then they stop writing because they're not in the flow anymore. But that's actually where the real writing starts, because it's creating what you believe word by word, not from past what you've said before, but from where you are right now. And that kind of writing can feel more like building a wall, like brick by brick. It can feel much more laborious and actually wrong, because it's so much work, because you've become addicted to flow. And I think that's where, for me, it was so helpful to have someone, for me to read my work to them, this new work that felt clunky and wrong, and say, how does this sound to you? And to have someone else say, that flows, that's beautiful, I understand you, is so helpful. Because to me, I would have said, this doesn't sound good anymore, because it didn't sound familiar. It wasn't something that I knew, so my brain would say this isn't good. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think, that one of the differences is, who are you writing for?
Mhm.
And before you write for anyone else, you have to write for yourself. And it's really important to figure out what you're writing, what you believe about what you're writing, what is your true thinking about it, or what's been imposed. There's so many things to take into consideration, which is a lot of work, and you're not going to do it alone. So,
Mhm.
doing it in a group, doing it with a couple of facilitators who know what they're doing in different areas, can give you a container so
Mhm.
that you can get this done and so that you learn something about yourself in the process.
Yeah, I mean, like, the container is so important because story is amorphous, right?
Mhm.
Story could spread out in forever. And also, what you said about, oh shoot, what was the first thing you said? I got so absorbed by the idea of container. You said, oh well.
Who are you writing for?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Thank you. I think that piece is so important,
Mhm.
because so many people want to write because they don't feel heard, but the first person that needs to hear them is themselves.
Absolutely.
They
Yeah.
need to believe it. And if you're writing for an audience who you already think hasn't heard you, you're gonna your writing isn't gonna be as clear and as true because you're probably gonna be trying to manipulate either yourself or them
Mm.
to reach some understanding. And there's this, I remember I found freedom writing You Don't Look Adopted when I finally just wrote for this ear. It was like me and the ear, and the ear had nothing to say to me. I was just trying to get the truest, my truest truth to the ear. And it was such a relief to not have the ear talk back.
Mhm. So I think a little summer school is always good.
Yeah.
And some people think, oh, summer school, we have to go to summer school. But actually, sometimes you meet your best friends and you have a
Mhm.
really good time and you
It's
get
more relaxed.
done and you're ahead of the game when you go back to school. So I think we're going to have fun at summer
Yeah.
school.
I totally agree. And I
And
think, oh, go ahead.
no, you go.
Well, I think that people feel there's nothing like having your story started and the feeling that you can do this. And then having other people that you get to check in with, for because you've made connections in the class. It's so foundational, I think, to a good life, really.
I think so too. So you need to say a little more about the summer school plan.
Yes.
And then I think we need to say that we have a plan for uh, something else a little further down the road.
Yeah, yeah. So the our group itself will be Sundays in June and July from 7 to 8:30 in the morning of Pacific time. So 10 to 11:30 Eastern time. There'll be 12 people in the group. We'll work at establishing where everybody is in their writing and develop a plan for how can we get you to a place where you'll feel like you can just keep going once the 2 months are over. And then we have an idea of having also separately a gathering in Provincetown, Massachusetts, the second to last weekend in October, where you and I will hold space for people to come. We'll have a group come and have writing time there, where we'll sort of a retreat, but people will need to find their own place to stay and their own food. Like a nice little, they can come visit us and we'll teach some things and they can write and make friends. But that's in the works.
And this is something that that when I had my center, we did these salons and we did these mini workshops and all of these things on the in Provincetown. And it's such a wonderful place. It's an arts and writers heaven.
In October too, like
It's
the
the
fall.
most beautiful place and fun and crazy.
Yeah.
And there are great places to stay that are a range of, I mean, you can get very posh or you can find a funky place and have a roommate and keep it very cool. But we can have a great time.
Yeah.
And in the midst of that, really dig into this process of, figuring out yourself and figuring out your writing together. And so we're working up to that. But this summer school is pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. And the thing about the Provincetown thing, it was when I went on a long weekend retreat in Montana. That was, it was hard for me to pay for. It was a big commitment. And that was the thing that triggered my brain that you're taking this very seriously. This is and that set everything in motion. So it's exciting to be able to offer that to other people. Well, Joyce, is it a beautiful day there?
Yesterday was gorgeous. Today's
Yeah.
a little funny, but you know what?
Yeah.
I love it. The trees are all blossoming. Everything's beautiful because of the rain. So it's a nice little rainy day.
Well, enjoy your rainy day and I will see you soon.
Yeah,
Okay.
take care.
Yeah, you too.